It's strange how life works sometimes, how the smallest actions, things you barely notice in the moment, can snowball into something much bigger. You'd think I would have seen it coming, but I didn't. And the worst part? I don't even know exactly when it all started. It was like a thread slowly being pulled from a sweater until, one day, everything unraveled. It wasn't a dramatic moment that set everything in motion. No loud arguments, no cheating accusations, no confrontations. No, it was something far less noticeable. Something so subtle that it would be easy for anyone else to miss. But I didn't, because I was paying attention. You see, I have a habit of noticing small things, the little details that most people overlook. It could be the way someone shifts in their seat when they're lying, or how they suddenly forget something they would normally remember. I'm the kind of guy who notices the things no one else does. It's not that I'm paranoid. At least, I don't think I am. But when you spend years with someone, you start to know them inside out. You start to recognize when something is off, even if it's imperceptible to everyone else. The first sign I noticed came when Lena, my wife of 5 years, began to spend a little too much time at the office. She was a manager at a marketing firm, and it wasn't unusual for her to stay late when deadlines were approaching. But this time was different. She started staying late more often, even when there wasn't a real reason for it. And when she came home, she was exhausted, but there was a new edge to her exhaustion, like she was trying to keep something hidden. I didn't say anything at first. I figured it was just work stress. But then, she started forgetting things. Little things, like our anniversary or what we had planned for the weekend. At first, I laughed it off, thinking it was just a bad week. But when it kept happening, it started to eat at me. It wasn't like Lena to forget things like that. She was organized, almost obsessively so. And then, there was the phone. Lena had always been pretty open with me about her phone. We'd never had any secrets between us. But one day, I saw her get a message and immediately swipe it away, almost like she was trying to hide it. Now, I know what you're thinking. Everyone does that. It's nothing. But with Lena, it was different. There was a shift. She had always left her phone out in the open before, casually checking texts or taking calls in front of me. But now, she was being overly protective of it. And it made me uneasy. I didn't confront her about it. I didn't accuse her of anything. But the thought lingered in the back of my mind. Is something going on? The final straw, though, came one evening when I found something that made everything click into place. Lena had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. She was in the other room, talking on the phone, but not with me. I could hear her voice, but it wasn't directed at me. It was soft, flirty even. I'd never heard her speak like that to anyone before. I know I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity got the best of me. I peeked at the screen, and there it was. A chat window opened with a guy I didn't recognize. His messages were light, playful, but there was an unmistakable undertone. They had a connection, something I wasn't a part of. My heart dropped. I didn't say anything that night. I couldn't. I was paralyzed by the realization that something was happening behind my back, something I couldn't control. I didn't know who he was, what they were talking about, or how deep this went. All I knew was that my wife was slipping away from me in ways I hadn't even begun to understand. But then, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit idly by and let it happen. I wasn't going to let this be the end of my marriage, without even knowing the full story. If Lena had secrets, I was going to uncover them. No more guessing, no more lying to myself. I had to know the truth, even if it meant going to uncomfortable lengths. That's when I made the call to a private investigator. I didn't want to do it. I hated the idea. But what choice did I have? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her, and I needed to know if I was right. What I didn't know, as I hung up the phone, was that this decision would set off a chain of events I could never have imagined. It wasn't just about Lena anymore. It was about me. About what I was willing to do to hold on to something I thought was unbreakable. And the truth? The truth would hit harder than I could have ever prepared for. I didn't sleep that night. In fact, I barely slept for the next few days. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of that chat window haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the verge of something big, something that could shatter everything. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to know the truth or whether I was terrified of it. But either way, I knew I couldn't ignore it. The private investigator was an easy decision. It wasn't that I didn't trust Lena. I'd always trusted her. But trust doesn't matter when you're being lied to, and that's exactly what I felt like was happening. I needed to know if she was seeing someone else, if she was having an affair, if this was something I could fix or if I had been blind all this time. I didn't tell her about the investigator, of course. That would have defeated the purpose. No, I kept everything to myself, pretending like everything was normal. I went to work, had dinner with her, and kept up the act like we were still the happy couple we once were. But inside, I was unraveling. Days passed, and the investigator did his job. He was quiet, efficient, and, most importantly, discreet. He was the kind of guy who could track someone without leaving a trace, which is exactly what I needed. It wasn't until the third day that I got the first bit of information from him. It was a short email, just a few lines, but it made my stomach churn. Her office hours are irregular. She's meeting someone on the side. A man named Alex, it appears. He's often at her apartment when you're not home. I stared at the screen, rereading those words, trying to make sense of them. Alex? Who was Alex? I didn't know anyone named Alex. Could this be the guy from the messages? I didn't know, but the pieces were starting to fall into place, and I didn't like what I was seeing. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened as the implications of the investigator's report sunk in. Lena had been seeing someone named Alex. Was this the person who had replaced me? The person who had made her feel alive again, as she had said that night? I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I stopped myself. No, I had to be smarter than that. I couldn't show my hand yet. I spent the next few days like a man on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the next piece of information. The investigator was more thorough than I expected. By the end of the week, I had a full report, not just the meetings, but photos, dates, and times. Everything. Lena's apartment had been a regular meeting place for them. She'd even gone out of town with him for a weekend getaway. I felt like I was drowning in the details. Each new piece of information felt like a slap to the face. But I had to know it all. I couldn't back down now. And then, there was the moment that changed everything. The investigator called me. His voice was steady, but I could hear the hesitation. "I have something you need to see," he said, and I could tell by his tone that it was big. I agreed to meet him at his office immediately. My mind raced the entire drive there. What could be worse than what I already knew? I had seen the photos, the text logs, everything. What else could there be? When I walked into his office, he slid a manila folder across the table. I opened it slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside were several more pictures, clearer this time. And in each one, Lena was with Alex. But there was something else. Something that took my breath away. In one picture, they were laughing together at a restaurant, his hand casually resting on her knee. In another, they were at her apartment. But this time, it was different. Lena wasn't just smiling. She was kissing him, full on the lips, a kiss that was more than friendly, more than just an innocent gesture. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the final photograph. It was taken through a window, blurry but clear enough to make out the details. Lena and Alex weren't alone. There was someone else in the room, someone I didn't expect to see. It was one of our mutual friends, someone I trusted deeply, someone I had known for years. My mind spun as I tried to process what I was looking at. The layers of deception, the lies, the betrayal. It was like the ground beneath me was shaking, and I couldn't catch my breath. I wasn't just losing Lena. I was losing the very fabric of my life, my circle of trust. I had no idea who I could rely on anymore. I didn't know what to do next. How could I confront her? How could I face her after all of this? I was overwhelmed, but one thing was certain. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. And I had a plan. But first, I had to confront her, face to face, with the truth. The day came sooner than I expected. I couldn't keep running from the truth anymore. Each day, the weight of the knowledge I had was gnawing at me. I could feel the tension rising between Lena and me. Every glance, every conversation, it all felt like a game now. She was lying, and I knew it. But I still had to face her, had to hear it from her mouth. I waited for the right moment. Lena was home early that day, and she seemed distracted, which wasn't unusual. The guilt in her eyes, though, was. I could see it now, clear as day. She didn't think I knew, but I could tell. Something had changed in her demeanor. She wasn't the same woman I had married. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands trembling slightly. I'd practiced this moment 100 times in my mind. How would I confront her? How would I keep my composure when everything I thought I knew about my life was falling apart? Lena walked in, her usual smile fading when she saw my serious expression. "What's going on?" she asked, clearly nervous. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked confused, and for a moment, I thought maybe she was going to deny everything. But I wasn't going to let her. I wasn't going to sit here and listen to her lie through her teeth. I know about Alex, I said, my voice coming out more calmly than I expected. Her face went pale. For a brief second, I saw the shock in her eyes, but it quickly morphed into something else: guilt, shame. How did you? She began, her voice faltering. I didn't give her a chance to finish. The investigator, I replied coldly, staring at her. I know everything. The meetings, the trips, the late nights. I even saw the photos. So don't lie to me, Lena. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. I don't care about the excuses. I don't want to hear how it happened or why. I just need to know one thing. Was it all a lie? Was everything we had just a game to you? Lena looked down, her hands trembling. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. The woman who had always been so confident, so composed, was now breaking in front of me. But it wasn't enough. Not after everything I had seen. It wasn't like that, she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. It just happened. I laughed bitterly, a dark humor rising in me. So what? You just accidentally fell in love with someone else? You accidentally kissed him? You accidentally spent weekends away with him? Tell me, Lena, how does that happen? I need to understand how you think I'm supposed to believe this. She was silent for a moment, her head hanging low. Then she finally looked up at me, her face full of remorse. I'm sorry, I never meant for it to happen. It just did. I don't know how to explain it. I wanted to yell, to scream at her, but I didn't. I stood there, trying to keep my emotions in check. Because the truth was, I wasn't angry at her anymore. I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. Angry at myself for thinking we were happy when clearly, I had been blind. You don't get it, I said, my voice quieter now, but still filled with the sting of betrayal. You don't get to just fall into something like this. You don't get to cheat on me and then apologize as if it's all going to go away. You've already destroyed everything. Her face crumpled as she began to cry, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. Not anymore. I don't know what you want from me, she sobbed, wiping her eyes. I can't change what I did. I'm sorry, okay? I'm really sorry. I don't need your apologies, I replied coldly. I don't need your pity. What I need is honesty. And right now, I can't even trust you to give me that. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stared at her, the woman I had once loved more than anything, and I realized that the person standing in front of me wasn't her anymore. She was a stranger I couldn't trust, a stranger who had shattered my world. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It wasn't just about Alex or the lies. It was about everything we had built together, everything I thought we had, being ripped apart in front of me. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know if I wanted to try and fix this, or if I should just walk away. But I knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same again. And that realization, that gut-wrenching truth, hit me harder than anything Lena could have said. The silence between us was unbearable. I watched as Lena stood there, her face pale, eyes bloodshot from crying. The woman I had known, the woman I had trusted, was a stranger to me now. And that thought, more than anything, twisted inside me like a knife. Do you love him? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but I needed to know. The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of everything we'd built together. Lena's eyes darted away from mine, and for a second, I thought she wasn't going to answer. But then she spoke, her voice barely audible. I don't know. I don't know what happened. I was confused. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought things would change if I just stayed quiet. I laughed, bitterly, almost without meaning to. You thought things would change if you stayed quiet? Is that why you were meeting him behind my back? Is that why you left me in the dark, pretending everything was fine? She shook her head, the tears still flowing freely. I wasn't thinking clearly. I didn't know how to handle it. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even upset. I was numb. A part of me felt relieved to finally hear the truth, but another part of me was dying inside. This wasn't just an affair. This was something deeper, something I hadn't seen coming. The weight of it all hit me in waves. I had loved her. I had trusted her. But she had been living a lie that now threatened to destroy everything. I'm not angry at you, I said, my voice hollow. I'm angry at myself. For not seeing it. For letting it go on this long. But mostly, I'm angry because you didn't think I was worth telling the truth to. All of this, you could have stopped it. But instead, You chose to keep me in the dark. She was quiet for a long time, her sobs barely audible. But when she finally looked up at me, something changed in her eyes. There was no more guilt or regret. Instead, there was this strange, almost defiant look. It was as if she had already made her peace with what had happened. "I don't think I can fix this," she said quietly, her voice now tinged with resignation. "I don't think I can go back to the way things were." I didn't know how to respond. The woman who had promised me forever, the woman who had stood by me through thick and thin, was now telling me that she couldn't fix it, that she couldn't go back. "Are you saying you want to leave?" I asked, my voice trembling with disbelief. She didn't say anything at first. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I don't know how to fix it. I don't even know who I am anymore. And I can't keep pretending everything is okay when it's not." That was it. That was the moment I knew everything had changed. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about everything we had built together, the life, the plans, the future we had talked about so many times. All of it had crumbled to dust in a matter of days. I didn't know what to do next. I wanted to scream, to beg her to stay, but I couldn't. Part of me wanted to say that we could work through this, that we could fix it, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Something had been broken between us, and no amount of apologies or explanations could fix it. "I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't keep pretending like everything's fine. I can't keep trying to fix something that's already broken." Lena looked at me, her expression unreadable. Then, without a word, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, alone with the wreckage of what had once been my life. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, trying to process everything that had just happened. The truth, as painful as it was, had set me free. But it had also left me hollow, empty, unsure of what came next. I had no idea what the future held. I didn't know if I could forgive her, or if I even wanted to. But one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. And I was going to have to face that reality, whether I liked it or not. The days that followed were nothing like what I imagined they'd be. When Lena walked out that night, I didn't know if she was coming back. The thought of her leaving, really leaving, tore me apart. But at the same time, there was this strange calm that settled in. It was like the storm had passed, and I was left standing in the aftermath, not sure what to do, but finally able to breathe again. I spent that first night in silence. No phone calls, no texts, just the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the ticking of the clock on the wall. It was the first time in weeks I felt like I could think clearly. All the noise, all the lies, it was gone. But it didn't make me feel better. It just made me feel empty. Lena hadn't returned that night, and when morning came, I didn't expect her to. She was gone. But as the hours passed, I started to realize something I wasn't prepared for. I didn't know who I was anymore. For so long, I had defined myself by my marriage, by my life with her. And now that it was falling apart, I didn't know where I stood. I spent the next few days in a daze. I went to work, but I wasn't really there. I couldn't focus. All I could think about was Lena. Was she out there with him? Was she happier without me? I told myself I didn't care, that I shouldn't care. But the truth was, I did. I cared more than I wanted to admit. I didn't hear from her. No texts, no calls, nothing. It was like she had vanished. And that's when the question started. Why wasn't she fighting for us? Why wasn't she trying to fix this? It didn't make sense. For so long, we had been inseparable. And now, she was gone without a trace. It was the silence that hurt the most. It was like the final nail in the coffin. I had never imagined that silence could be so loud. Every moment without her felt like an eternity, and I was left wondering if she was even thinking about me at all. Was she out there, living her life with him, forgetting everything we had ever shared? The thought made my stomach churn, but I couldn't escape it. It wasn't until the 5th day that I finally heard from her. The message came in the middle of the afternoon, just as I was about to leave work. "We need to talk." 3 words. Just 3 words, and they sent my heart racing. It wasn't the message I wanted to receive, but it was the one I had been waiting for. I stared at the screen, my mind racing with what she might say. Was she coming back? Was she going to tell me everything had been a mistake? But as much as I wanted answers, part of me was terrified of what she might say. What if she was done for good? What if this was the last time I'd ever hear from her? I didn't respond right away. I needed time to think, time to prepare for whatever was coming next. But the longer I waited, the more I realized that I wasn't ready to face her. Not yet. I wasn't sure if I ever would be. In the end, I sent a simple reply. When? Her response was quick. Tonight. I'll come by at 7. The hours between that message and 7 p.m. felt like they lasted a lifetime. I couldn't stop pacing, my mind replaying every moment of our relationship, trying to figure out where I went wrong. What had I missed? Where did things go off track? And most importantly, why wasn't she fighting for us? When the time finally came, I wasn't ready. I opened the door, and there she was, standing on the other side. She looked different, like she had been through a storm of her own. Her eyes were red, her face drawn, but there was something in her posture that screamed resolve. She had made her decision, and now, I was about to hear it. She stepped inside without saying a word, and we both stood there in silence for a long moment. Neither of us knew where to start. I didn't know how to look at her, didn't know how to feel. She was still the woman I loved, but she was also the woman who had betrayed me, and I wasn't sure how to reconcile that. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know how we got here. I don't know how it all happened, but I know it's too late to fix it now. My heart sank, but I didn't show it. I had already known that it was over, but hearing her say it out loud made it feel final. I think I've already made my choice, she continued, her voice shaking slightly. I've been thinking about it for days, and I've come to terms with it. We're done. I'm done. And just like that, everything I had feared came crashing down. This was it. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. She had made up her mind. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. But the truth, that harsh, cold truth, was standing right in front of me. The woman I had spent my life with, the woman I had loved so fiercely, was now telling me it was over. And in that moment, I realized that there was nothing I could do to change it. The silence that had filled the days before felt louder than ever. The end was here, and it was time to accept it. The days that followed Lena's confession were a blur. I kept telling myself it was over, that I should just move on. But every time I tried to think of a future without her, my mind would go blank. I didn't know how to move on. How do you forget someone you've spent years with? How do you just erase them from your life? I tried to keep myself busy. Work, distractions, anything to keep my mind from spiraling. But there was something inside me that wouldn't let go. Something telling me that I hadn't heard the full truth yet. I didn't know what it was, but I could feel it. This nagging feeling that there was more to the story than Lena had let on. Then, out of nowhere, I got a text. It wasn't from Lena. It was from a number I didn't recognize. The message was simple, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. You don't know the whole story. She isn't who you think she is. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank. Maybe one of my friends messing with me. But there was something about the message that felt real. Something about it that made my heart race. I stared at the screen for a long time, my mind whirling with possibilities. Who could it be? And what did they mean by she isn't who you think she is? I didn't reply right away. Instead, I sat there, the phone burning in my hand, wondering if I should just ignore it. But then I remembered everything that had happened. Lena's lies, the affair, the distance that had grown between us. Suddenly, the idea of not knowing the whole truth felt unbearable. So I did the only thing I could think of. I responded. Who is this? The reply came almost instantly. I'm someone who knows what's really going on. Meet me tomorrow at 10 p.m. I'll tell you everything. I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to delete the message and pretend it never happened. But another part of me couldn't resist the pull. I needed to know more. I needed to understand why Lena had betrayed me, why everything felt like a lie. The next night, I found myself driving to the location the anonymous person had given me. A small, dimly lit cafe on the edge of town. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but it wasn't this. As I walked in, I scanned the room, looking for anyone who might be waiting for me. And then I saw her. Lena. But it wasn't just her. She was sitting with someone. A man. The man I had seen in the pictures, Alex. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the way they were sitting, the way their hands were touching. The way Lena smiled at him. A smile I hadn't seen in a long time. My heart sank, and I felt the air leave my lungs. It was like I had been punched in the chest. What was going on? Why was she here with him? Why had she asked me to meet her when she was with him? I stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. Should I confront her now? Or should I just leave and walk away from all of this? But then, as if on cue, the man looked up and saw me standing there. He nudged Lena, and she turned to look at me. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, There was a flicker of guilt in her gaze, but it was quickly replaced by something else, something I couldn't quite place. She stood up, but it wasn't an apologetic gesture. It was more like a move to defend herself. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice cool, guarded. I felt like everything inside me was unraveling. I couldn't think, couldn't process the words. I just stood there, staring at her, at the man next to her, at the life I thought we had. Before I could say anything, the man spoke up. "You're the husband, right? The one who's been following her?" I nodded, unable to speak at first. "Look, we weren't trying to hide from you. Lena just didn't know how to tell you everything." He said it so casually, like this wasn't the most devastating moment of my life. "But now you're here, and we can finally talk." Lena looked at him, and there was something about the way she glanced at him that made everything inside me freeze. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was something else. Something that made me feel like I was the last person who mattered. "You weren't supposed to know," Lena said, her tone quieter now, but the coldness still there. "I didn't want you to find out this way." "Find out what?" I asked, my voice trembling despite myself. Lena paused, taking a deep breath, as if bracing herself for what was about to come. "I've been seeing him for a while now. But it's not just that." She looked at the man beside her, then back at me. "I've been seeing him because we're together. But there's more. Much more that you don't know." I felt my world tilt on its axis. What was she talking about? What more could there possibly be? I was done hearing lies. I needed the truth, all of it. But what she said next would change everything. Lena's next words hit me like a tidal wave. I couldn't process them immediately. My brain scrambled, trying to make sense of what she had just said. "We've been working together for months," she continued, her voice steady but distant. "But it's not just about the affair, not just about him. There's something bigger, something you don't understand." I blinked, trying to grasp what she was saying. "What do you mean, something bigger? What are you talking about?" She looked at Alex, and he nodded, as if this was the moment to spill everything. Lena hesitated for a moment before speaking again, her voice barely a whisper. "It wasn't just me making decisions. We've been planning everything together. Alex, he's been a part of something that involves both of us." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What? Planning what? What the hell is going on here?" Lena stood there, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Alex finally spoke up, his voice calm, almost too calm. "It's not just about the affair. Lena didn't tell you the whole story because she was afraid of what you'd do. But she and I have been working on something that involves a lot more than just us." I shook my head, trying to push back the dizziness, the overwhelming sense that everything I thought I knew was slipping through my fingers. "Stop. Just stop. What are you talking about? What have you been planning?" Lena took a deep breath. "There's a company, a business opportunity, but it's not just a business deal. We've been working on something together, something bigger, and we needed you out of the picture. You weren't supposed to find out." The pieces weren't fitting. It didn't make sense. What could Lena and Alex possibly be involved in that would require me to be out of the picture? Was it a scam? Was she manipulating me all along? "Out of the picture?" I repeated, struggling to grasp her words. "You've been lying to me, not just about the affair, but about everything? About your job, about your life? All these years." Alex stood up now, moving toward me, his demeanor unfazed. She had to keep up the illusion for this to work. "You weren't supposed to know what was going on behind the scenes. We needed you to think everything was normal so we could get what we needed." I stared at both of them, feeling like my world had crumbled into 1,000 pieces. "What exactly is it you needed?" Lena's eyes met mine, a cold look in them now, completely devoid of the warmth I once loved. "I needed a way out, a way to take control of my own life. But not just that. I needed you to trust me, to believe in everything we had. That's why the affair had to happen." My mind was reeling. "You did all of this to escape? To take control?" My voice was trembling now. "But we had everything. Why couldn't you just tell me the truth? Why this? This betrayal?" She shook her head slowly. "You never would have understood. I tried to make it work, but I couldn't keep pretending to be the person you wanted me to be. I wasn't happy. This was my way of finally taking control." For a moment, all I could do was stare at her, my mind struggling to reconcile the woman I had loved with the person standing in front of me now. "So all of this, all of it, was just a plan? A scheme to get what you wanted?" Alex intervened again. "It wasn't just a scheme. It was about creating opportunities, leveraging your trust, and the position you had. Lena had to play the part, and you never questioned her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt sick, betrayed on every level. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built my life with, was telling me that everything had been a lie, that our entire relationship had been a carefully constructed act, and I had been the fool playing my part. This was all a game to you? I asked, my voice barely audible, as the weight of the truth settled in. Lena didn't respond. Instead, she just stood there, her face hardened, as if she had already made peace with everything. Alex looked at me one last time before turning his gaze back to Lena, as if he was ready for the next chapter. Why didn't you tell me, Lena? I whispered, the words escaping in a rush. Why did you let me believe in something that wasn't real? She didn't have an answer. There was no explanation that could make any of this right. I turned away then, my legs unsteady as I walked out of the cafe. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't stay there, couldn't look at them for another second. My head was spinning, my thoughts racing. The life I thought I had, the future I had imagined, was gone, and in its place was a cold, harsh truth. One that left me empty, hollow, and unsure of anything anymore. The next few days were a blur. I didn't know what to do, where to go, or who to turn to. My mind was still reeling from everything I had just discovered. Lena's betrayal, the lies, and the world I had believed in crumbling around me. I felt like I had lost everything. But somewhere, deep down, I knew I couldn't stay stuck in this. I couldn't let the anger, the hurt, and the confusion consume me. I had to take control of my own life again. I started small. I cleared out the things that reminded me of Lena, photos, mementos, the little things that we had shared. I didn't throw them away, but I put them out of sight. I needed space to heal. I needed space to breathe. I also started reaching out to old friends, people I had neglected over the years. It was like a breath of fresh air, reconnecting with those who had been there for me before. They reminded me that I wasn't alone in this. I didn't need Lena, or the life I thought I had, to be happy. I had a support system that would help me rebuild. And then, there was something else. I started rediscovering parts of myself I had forgotten. Hobbies I had pushed aside, passions that had been buried under years of routine. I went for runs, spent more time outside, took up painting again, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. It was like I was finally getting back to who I was, the person I had neglected in the whirlwind of my past relationship. It wasn't easy. Some days were harder than others. I still had moments when I wanted to reach out to Lena, when I wanted to ask her for answers, for closure. But every time I did, I reminded myself that I had already taken the most important step. I had let go. And slowly, I started feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I wasn't going to let my past define me. I was moving forward, one step at a time, and learning to embrace the uncertainty of it all. There was a whole world out there, and I was ready to face it. Then, one evening, something unexpected happened. I ran into Lena at a cafe. She looked different, but in a way that felt genuine. She was no longer the woman who had betrayed me. She was someone who had made her mistakes, and I had made mine. We exchanged a few words, no apologies, no awkwardness. Just a quiet understanding that we had both moved on. I hope you're doing okay, she said softly, a hint of sincerity in her voice. I am, I replied, smiling for the first time in what felt like forever. I'm finding my way. It's been a tough journey, but I'm better now. She nodded, a small, hopeful smile on her face. I'm glad to hear that. We didn't say much more, but in that moment, I realized something. The anger, the hurt, it didn't have to define me. I had learned to forgive, not for her, but for myself. I was free, and that freedom felt more empowering than anything I had ever experienced. I walked away from that cafe with a new sense of confidence. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited about what was to come. I didn't know where the road would lead, but I was ready to walk it, with or without the past. And that, I realized, was the most important thing. The journey was mine to take.